One of the biggest animes in the world is starting to set up its massive finale arc. So how do they do it? Well, they have a series of movies heading our way. The beginning of the trilogy is this movie, Infinity Castle, and we have a lot to say. Yes, hello everyone, my name is EJ Marino, and welcome to Flickering Myth. If you guys are new to Flickering Myth, make sure you guys give us a subscription, give us a thumbs up, and comment down below, because this episode is going to be wild. We are diving into the new Demon Slayer movie, Infinity Castle. You know, I am a newcomer to the world of Demon Slayer. This is something I honestly sought out because my brother is a big Demon Slayer fan. So I was like, you know what, let me find the press screening stuff. Let me just get into this world to, essentially make him happy. But also, I wanted to dive into something new. And Demon Slayer, I've been sleeping on you because I did not expect you to be this bloody, this weird, this fun, and have this much of a mythos, this much of a universe. Maybe a little bit too much of mythos and lore, where I spent most of this movie in backstories. Honestly, overall, I was really impressed with Infinity Castle. This is a visually stunning, epic, start of a trilogy. That's another complaint I would have. We'll dive into my positives and negatives, but this definitely felt like the intro to a story and not necessarily its own complete tale, but that's a little hard to critique against it because I know it's trying to set up a trilogy of films. But yes, Infinity Castle is here. It has been such a big hyped moment. If you're following Japanese cinema, this is one of the biggest Japanese movies of all time and the biggest one of the year. So we're seeing Demon Slayer really have its moment. So now that it's coming to the States with this Infinity Castle release, how will it survive? How will it fare? If the fans that I'm seeing and if this movie, the quality of it is anything to go by, we are looking out for a massive hit here. I see it in its future. It is a well-told story of revenge. It is a well-told story of these epic heroes trying to set up a massive battle against their big bad. It's an easy movie to follow. It's not hard, especially again for me as a newcomer. I would be like, what's this character? What are they about? What's going on here? And then the movie would actually take some time to explain some stuff, or at least give you enough of a solid bit of storytelling that you as a newcomer can understand it. But I can definitely say longtime fans are going to get so much more out of this. I like that a movie can work like this. I have stumbled into some dense experiences with some movies, with some adaptations, or maybe even live action remakes. I always go back to the Warcraft movie. Maybe not the best movie, but I knew fans, hardcore Warcraft fans, complimented it for how deep it got into the lore, into the universe. I was completely lost that whole movie. This movie did not make me feel lost. I understood what was happening. It was easy to slip into this world. I may not have the emotional attachment to some characters, especially some of the ones that happen to die in this, but I still felt it, and I was still able to understand and grasp the story in a compelling way. That's how you could tell this is good story. That's how you could tell these are good characters, and especially the voice acting. I was able to watch the dub, but I got a little taste of what the subbed version of the traditional Japanese language one, and it's just such good voice acting that makes you feel for these characters. So with great visuals, strong voice acting, and a compelling story, it's easy to recommend Infinity Castle. The heroes we follow in Demon Slayer are basically thrust into a moving demon labyrinth. This is a very strange world that they're thrust into, that it's constantly evolving. There's always new rooms, there's always new locations to kind of unravel in, and that's what makes this, again, a fun viewing. Do I think some of the backgrounds and some of the fight scenes got a bit repetitive, where I'm like, oh, you guys are fighting in another brown room because that's all this hotel of hell that basically is laid out to be? Sure, I got a little, I would love a variety, so that's why the backstories I would eat up sometimes, because I'm like, oh, a change of scenery, that's nice. But yeah, basically our heroes are stuck into this place, and they're having to fight the upper ranks. They're having to fight these really tough demons that are giving them such a hard time. Some of these heroes that are pretty well off fighters, I mean, Zenitsu, who I think is pretty cool of a character, and I kind of get where he's going for, has to go up against someone who was his former senior, someone who he has very big connections with. We also have the Shinobu and Doma fight, which is another revenge tale. She has something to prove, some revenge to get on Doma as a villain. It's really interesting to see these characters get their moments to fight in their own little own little kind of areas as well. It makes for a compelling story. It is a bit stop and start, I will say, there, where you're like, oh, and here's one story, and now we wrapped it up, and now let's move to the other characters. In a way, I appreciated that it was separate, so I was able as a newcomer to digest each character, learn who they were, spend some time with them before we were thrust to another one. That was refreshing, but I'm curious of how longtime fans would feel of the pacing of this. The pacing is kind of one of the biggest issues, where we would tell these stories like it felt like vignettes. It almost didn't feel like a complete cinematic experience in that way, because it just felt like we were telling individual stories. If this was an anime, this would have been broken up, like at least a series, this would have been broken up to maybe 3 or 4 episodes. So it definitely feels like episodes mushed into one, but not as painfully as I've seen in other anime film adaptations. So this is definitely not a negative critique, but I will say the pace was just just a bit off for me, just a bit off. But then we would get this epic fight with like Tanjiro and Gayu and all, like Kaza, I believe is the villain that they were fighting at the end, and I'm like, oh, we're spending some time with here. We're letting this breathe, and now we're getting backstories to this villain, and now we're doing this, and I'm like, ooh, give me a little bit of an evil Anakin Skywalker backstory where this guy gets a, ooh, I like this. I thought it was really, the pacing was odd, and then we would get to the end where we would slow things down, and I would really appreciate the storytelling then. So this movie definitely is not perfect for me, but I really appreciate how they told the story and the method they did it, because it allowed me to fall for these characters even more. I ended up walking out with some villains I liked, some heroes I liked, and I was really impressed with that. So I overall, I think the movie has some pacing issues, but not enough as a massive slight against it. From the fight scenes to the titular Infinity Castle itself, my goodness, what a stunning anime. I don't know if Demon Slayer often plays in this kind of beautiful world, but wow, I was really blown away by so much of this. And I think it's also not just in the visuals, it's also the audio, the score, banging, the voice acting, like I said, great. This is just really well made, like, anime filmmaking. I think it's hard to kind of make these movies often feel worthwhile and often feel cinematic. And like I said, it struggles a bit in the story department feeling cinematic, as it feels like a couple anime episodes mushed together. But you know what? No, because this movie is such a top tier visual delight. The score, there's no way a TV show would ever get a score this good. Like, you know what I mean? It's just, you could tell that they really took their time to make this feel larger than life in the filmmaking department. I really, really do appreciate that. Where the story just let me down just ever so slightly, it was made up for with a striking, a visually delightful, just a treat to look at. And then the auditory stuff, just the sounds, the scores during the fight scenes, I felt emotions, I felt the pain and the sorrow and the thrillingness of each fight just through the music. It's just really awesome to see, where you could see the filmmakers go, okay, maybe this isn't our best story, we're definitely starting off a trilogy here, but my goodness, I'm going to blow you away in other departments. And that's what worked for me. I am a story person first and foremost. I need a good story. I need to be able to be invested in my characters, in my journeys that these people are going on, and that's fine. But if that's just a bit weak, I go to look for the other departments. I go to look for the score, the voice acting, the overall fight choreography, which is great as well. All of that works, so it helps balance it out. If the animation was weaker itself, if the fight choreography was boring, if it just wasn't badass people like shooting water out of blades and slicing people up and then reattaching themselves, like if it wasn't that, this could have definitely been a weaker review for me. But my goodness, I will excuse a somewhat okay story when they're giving me like visual treats as they were throughout. As a newcomer to Demon Slayer, I have to say I can see myself maybe getting into the anime, maybe going back and venturing into the full story stuff, because I really like what was presented here. Will I be a diehard fan? I don't know. I think this definitely has some tone issues, where sometimes it is the bloodiest, disgusting thing, and then it's very cheesy traditional anime jokes and storytelling stuff. So there's some things that I could see myself not fully loving, but overall, what a great presentation for newcomers and for longtime fans alike. I see Infinity Castle working for a lot of people. I definitely had a blast with it. I think this is such a good cinematic experience to see from the visuals and the auditory department. If you're okay with a pretty traditional anime film story, I think you will be pretty good. It definitely makes it worthwhile to see on a big screen by just the work that they put in on the filmmaking side of things. So what did you guys think of my review? What do you think of Demon Slayer Infinity Castle? If you've been able to see this, what did you think? What was your favorite fight scene? What was your favorite moment? Let me know down in the comments below. Make sure you guys subscribe to Flickering Myth and give us a thumbs up if you did enjoy. Alright guys, let's talk about more Demon Slayer right down below.